But let's get more on what transpired yesterday as well as what we can expect today at the state capture inquiry. In studio is Manqoba Mchunu. He's been following this story. Manqoba, thank you very much indeed for coming through. So let's go back to yesterday where these two witnesses contradicting what former President Jacob Zuma had to say.
Of course, interesting, Blaine, because, for the first time we have those witnesses poking holes in the testimony of the former president in so far as the removal of Themba Maseko from GCIS. Of course, you recall, Blaine, it goes back to the allegation that the former president had asked Themba Maseko to help the Guptas, of course, to secure some advertising, for the Guptas to secure some advertising spend from the government. And of course, he says he didn't abide to this request by the president. And this is the reason why he believes he was ultimately targeted and removed by the president. Of course, we do know that he was replaced by Jimmy Manyi at the time, or Mzwanele Manyi as he calls himself now at the time. And of course, he was seemingly the former president's preferred candidate in this position. And we know his proximity to the Gupta brothers. We've heard over the years, going as far as even, acquiring that or buying that news channel ANN7 after it had, the Guptas had moved out of the country. And so his proximity with the Guptas was really questionable. And as to why the president would have recommended him, it leaves a lot of questions that, still need to be explored by the commission. But of course, he says that, Brent Simons, that is, he says, what the former president was saying at the commission is simply not true. He says that, knowing the character of the former minister, that's the late Minister Collins Chabane, who was then the minister in the presidency, and knowing his character, he spoke fondly of him, Blame. He spoke of his humility. He spoke of how, for example, he used to greet and compliment stuff like somebody you could relate to. He didn't even, behave in a manner like a minister or, walk tall or walk, he was a humble person. So this is a person who knew him very well, a person who they will have casual chats with. And he says that on one day he actually confided in him to say that, the former president has instructed me to remove Themba Maseko. And he says when the president did give testimony on the 16th of July, which is 2 months ago, at the State Capture Commission, denying that actually he had instructed this, he says that he's simply not being truthful, so by implication that he might have misled the inquiry with regards to that evidence.
So I guess the big question is who lied under oath? That's the main thing, isn't it?
That's the main question, Blaine. And of course, it is the Deputy Chief Justice himself that will have to determine that, because once all the testimonies have been given, he still has a very, laborious process, a very difficult process of sifting through and, comparing those testimonies and seeing, really weighing them, as he will put it, to say who's telling the truth, who's not. And therefore, with that, he'll then make his conclusion as to regards to this matter.
We also heard from the former chief of staff in Chabane's office who spoke about a threat he received. What was that all about? Of
course, he also came there to corroborate this evidence of Themba Maseko, that indeed it was the former president that had instructed him to be removed. Of course, he also corroborated the testimony of Brent Simons with regards to the issue that there was a phone call that was made to Minister Collins Chabane instructing him to remove Themba Maseko and to replace him with Jimmy Manyi. So he says that he was the one who was there with the minister when that came from the president came. And he says that the minister was abroad, the former president was abroad at the time when he made the call to him. So he basically confirmed. He says, though, I didn't hear the content of that phone call, and I didn't hear him instructing him to remove Themba. But what the minister had said to me after that is that we would need to remove Themba, which in effect, corroborates that fact that after a phone call from the president, then there was that action to remove Themba Maseko. But he says that following that, he did receive a threat on the day that the former president was testifying at the commission. And he says that the call came and it simply said to him that you mustn't reveal anything about the removal of Themba Maseko because if that does happen, there will be consequences. So basically there were threats that were made to him with regards to this issue as to not to say anything about the issue.
Any indication at this stage when the former president will be back at the commission?
Well, plainly we're hearing some dates. Of course, that comes from his lawyers while they were arguing in the KwaZulu-Natal court last week. I think the dates that have been thrown around is October, I think around the 4th of October or November the 20th, somewhere around there. So at this point, we are not quite sure. The commission would not also confirm as to whether he will be coming and what date he will be coming. Of course, they're keeping that close to their chest at this point. But the indication from the Zuma lawyers was October or November. But the commission saying that they are going to confirm, of course, closer to the time. We do know that there will be a lot of, processes behind it in terms of security. So we have to be told in advance to do accreditation and all sorts of things. Yeah,
but speaking about one person that is coming back today is Mxolisi Dukwana, the former Economic Development MEC. He was giving testimony with regards to Ace Magashule as well.
Yes, and we expect him to further continue that testimony implicating the former Free State Premier and now ANC Secretary General S. Magashule. Of course, the allegation is that, he is the one that introduced Dukwana to the Gupta family, and there were certain trips going to Saxonwold that they'd made, and where the Guptas had offered a 20 million rand bribe to him monthly to secure a contract, a multi-million contract for their business associate. So we expect to hear more testimony from him with regards to that, and of course how the former Free State Premier was involved in all of this.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting. Manqoba Mchunu, Man Q as is known around here, bring us all the latest with regards to the State Capture Commission. We're going to take a quick break.